where he sleeps with his cleaning lady. Nothing ever comes from that. They could remove it completely, and there'd be no change to the film, or its message, or its meaning, or its theme. None of it. Just adding another 30 seconds or so of R-rated material into the already 10 minutes of inappropriate stuff that's in the movie. Nicolas Cage goes through the looking glass area again when the lady who rents out room 10 is in there, and he sees her and another lady. And this movie's rated R, but it should be rated L for lesbian, because the movie really, really focuses in on the two lesbians in their room. It also focuses on two different lesbians in the same room later on. Very, very heavily focuses on them. I can't stress enough how much time is spent looking in on the three different lesbians in the movie. But he sees them doing stuff, and then he leaves. And then he does some stuff with his wife, and then one of the lesbians dies. Very sad. Nicolas Cage and his wife go out dancing at a casino, and when they come back, they see what looks like a body in their pool. But when a light turns on, it's just a pig carcass. A little suspicious. There's a funny moment in this scene. Nicolas Cage is trying to fish the pig out of the pool, and at one point he just smacks it with a pool skimmer. That kind of a funny moment. I laughed out loud at that. And then a police officer shows up. Police officer John, I think his name is. Really boring name for a police officer. Why not police officer Maximus or something? Why are there not more better names in movies? Why are there so many Johns? Why can't there just be a couple of Tiberiuses and Maximuses? That's, again, nothing related to this film personally. Just a personal gripe I have. The police officer is saying, hey man, you shouldn't have burned that pig carcass in the desert, which Nicolas Cage did. I'm not sure why. Nicolas Cage says, I didn't want to make a big deal with it, my wife was upset about it, so I just took it out to the desert and burned it. But the police officer's like, you didn't want to make a big deal? Well, you made a big deal of it now, buddy. Really, antagonistic for no reason. I was thinking of reasons why burning a pig carcass would be bad, and the only thing was coyotes maybe, but nothing that would warrant a police response. Nicolas Cage is doing some more boring stuff, fixing up the motel, going to the looking glass occasionally. And once he realizes that the murdered lady was the one in his motel room, he tracks down the other lesbian and in a bar and questions her. That doesn't go well. He gets thrown through a table, pulls out a gun on them, announces very loudly, I don't want you coming to my hotel, my motel, the motel located on this street, the motel named this. Me, the crazy man with a gun. I don't want you at my motel. Very reckless about announcing who he is, especially since he pulled a gun out on a woman. And that's rarely a good move in public, is pulling a gun out on a lady. But he goes back to his wife, she's mad at him because she thinks she's sleeping with the lesbian number 2 and slept with lesbian number 1. But then they do a little something and just forget all about it. Nicolas Cage goes back to the looking glass. He really has zero reason to be doing any of this, doing any of the looking glassing. But, they gotta fill in that screen time, so what better way than having lesbian number 2 and lesbian number 3 do some weird BDSM stuff for a solid 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Adds absolutely nothing to the plot, adds nothing to the movie. The character development does not exist. It's the only people involved are Nicolas Cage, who we've seen do this before, lesbian number 2, who we've seen do this before, and lesbian number 3, a person that we will never see again. The only worthwhile moment of that scene is that Nicolas Cage sees another guy's leg sticking out just past the doorway where he can't see. And he's suspicious because he's like, oh, well, if lesbian number 2 didn't kill him, then maybe leg guy did. So he does nothing. He just continues to walk around slowly around the motel. And then he gets a call from Ben. And Ben is the old manager of the motel. And this entire movie, Nicolas Cage has been calling him, trying to ask questions about a murder that took place there a few months before Nicolas Cage took over. And he finally meets Ben in the desert. They start talking about some stuff, standard thriller stuff like, hey, did you kill her? No. Are you being followed? No. And then Ben dies. He had a total of 3 minutes of screen time, and only about 20 seconds of those was relevant to the plot. It's another strike in the unnecessary things that we have to add to this movie to make it a thriller movie checklist. And I hate movie checklists. I hate them because so rarely is anything added to them to make them unique. It's just going down the list and adding stuff to a movie that has to be there, the cliches that's in every movie. Nicolas Cage goes back to his house in the motel. He calls his wife saying, hey, be careful. His wife is not careful. In fact, she's the opposite. She is uncareful. She gets kidnapped by the policeman John that we talked about earlier. He kidnaps her, puts her into room 10 for some reason. I don't know why he picked room 10. Everyone has a fascination with room 10. With Tommy, the trucker guy who was doing something with ladies, not his wife, it made sense because Ben told him to so that he could watch them through the secret tunnel. Why the lesbians 1, 2, and 3 all chose to go there is unknown. Why Officer John chose to go there is unknown. This is what I was talking about why characters in this movie are kind of poorly written. Because they all just happen to be attracted to this one thing. Statistically speaking, there are 10 rooms in the motel. And the fact that 4 different people just so happened to pick 10 is like 1 in 10,000, I think, is the likelihood that they all separately chose this one room. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The movie's almost over. Nicolas Cage crashes through the looking glass. Now, I don't know what the movie's called anymore, because there's no more looking glass. And he starts fighting with Officer John, who has his wife kidnapped. It's an okay battle. It's really nothing special, kind of boring. And then Officer John dies. And the big dramatic conclusion is Nicolas Cage doesn't die in this film. Yeah, I may have just missed one obscure piece of dialogue in this film, but I don't know who the killer was. 2 people died in this film, lesbian 1, and some unknown lady who was killed before Nicolas Cage took over. They added a few random characters to add suspense, a few red herrings, another checklist item, and they didn't add anything to the movie except to add some more suspects. But in the end, we didn't find out who killed them. We assume it's Officer John, but there's no motivation for him. There's no reasoning. There's no logic as to why this police officer would be killing these 2 random ladies. And why is lesbian number 2, who I'm pretty sure is a prostitute, how is she involved in this? Why is she okay with being an accomplice to 2 murders? I really, really am disappointed by this film. It could have been a really great movie. It could have had a really good twist. Instead, it's, hey, one of 3 characters that's been in the movie is the killer. What? That's so surprising. That is such a really, really well-written twist. That's so not frustrating to the audience, and that definitely does have a payoff based on what the characters are doing. If you couldn't tell, I was being sarcastic because none of that's true. The movie ends. I didn't like it. 2 out of 10. Really disappointing. It could have been a solid 8 out of 10 if they had done any good directing and any good writing. Nicolas Cage's performance, however, will get a 6.5 out of 10. No, not 6.5. 7. Nicolas Cage in this role in any other movie would have gone insane. He would have been yelling, waving his hands around, jerking his head, all that stuff. But he keeps it so restrained. And that is one of the few killer elements of the movie. I was expecting another Nicolas Cage weird noises and screaming fest. But he is so resigned and so restrained that he seems like a real person. And I have to give Nicolas Cage credit. 7 out of 10. His performance in this movie is incredible. Despite all the other bad stuff, that is a shining beacon. That is one good part. And honestly, I'm proud of Nicolas Cage for not giving into his usual stereotypes. So yeah, 2 out of 10 on the movie, 7 out of 10 for Nicolas Cage's performance. And that's it for this episode of Ups and Downs of Nicolas Cage. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, give it a 5-star rating on the Apple iTunes store, or share with your friends and families because every listen helps. If you liked this episode, then be sure to stay tuned every Monday and Friday. You can do that by following my Instagram page at Ups and Downs of Nicolas Cage, or you can do it by following my Twitter at the Ups and Downs 4. If you like this episode, stay tuned for this Monday's episode, Red Rock West. And that's all. Again, thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful day.